All right, I'd like to call this Policy Review Committee meeting of May 21st, 2025 to order. Dr. Fagenbush, would you call roll?
Mr. Mancuso?
Here.
Ms. Brent? Here. Ms. Anselm? Present. Ms. Jones? Here. Mr. Parity?
Here.
We have full quorum.
Okay, thank you. So, under new business, item 1, discussion and any action regarding policy GAMB, employee dress. You have a copy of a proposed policy in your packet. I'm going to recommend that we table that item until next month, actually into July.
I'll make a motion to table.
Okay. Motion by Ms. Parity, second by Ms. Brent. Any discussion, questions? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, item 2, discussion and action on policy manual review process. So I just wanted to take a moment on this one to kind of go through. You've all been given or should have access to the Assembly platform through the board's website with LSBA's kind of draft or template policies. I don't mind if any of y'all have any questions about that right now. Mr. Kalum's sharing that, what it looks like on the Assembly platform. Any questions or access issues that anybody has on the committee? Everybody? Yes, ma'am.
So has anybody else found a way to navigate through it without a split screen, like to be able to look at the law and the draft at the same time type of thing? Or is everything like a back button that you have to flip through?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think that you do have to use back buttons and navigate that way. The laws, so one thing that I was doing is just open multiple tabs. Of course, it's nice when you have multiple monitors. But yeah, it's not perfect, but it actually does work pretty well with the links and everything else. I guess once you kind of start really get into it and moving on, you just get used to it. But any access issues, I mean, is everybody able to get into it? I did request that the full board be given access to review those as well. Going through one of the items that I would like to discuss here in a minute is to actually add an item to the agenda. You know, the agenda we talked about taking on the 100 and 200 series. If you notice on that Assembly platform, there's a 00 series. So those are a little bit higher level policies, mainly coming from law, just to kind of define the board, define the policy manual a little bit, has definitions in there. Should be easy to work through. But as far as the process goes, what I would like to do is kind of like we're doing tonight, give everybody the access to the drafts on the website, give you as much time as possible to kind of start reviewing those, making your notes. Then when we do meet to go over the specific sections or specific policies, because there will be some sections that we'll have to break up. But when we do that, when we come to meet at committee, we compile all those comments, work through them, and then vote for a recommendation to the board on adoption. So I don't think there's really any action on that topic, but if anybody has any suggestions or like to see it happen a different way, the floor is yours. Unless everybody's good with that. Okay, so hearing no other comments to that, I would like to recommend to the committee that we add an item to the agenda, discussion and action on policy, discussion and action regarding Louisiana School Board Association policies. I think it's called 00 series. Let me see.
Yep.
Yeah, 00 series policies.
I second that motion.
Okay, well, I need a motion. Okay, I have a motion by Ms. Anderson, a second by Ms. Parity. It has to be a unanimous vote. So if you don't mind, Dr. Fagenbush, roll call vote.
Mr. Mancuso?
Yes.
Ms. Brent?
Yes.
Ms. Anselm?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Parity?
Yes.
All yeses.
Okay, thank you for that. So we'll take that one up now. The policy 00. So what I'd like to do is just kind of go through one at a time. and see if anybody has any comments. So in front of you, you have, it says draft, section 00. Yes, ma'am. So draft section 00, St. Mary Parish School Board.
Okay, so are we gonna go from this and not have to worry about going from here?
Yes, ma'am. You have a printout. So Mr. Veed has the website platform up, the Assembly platform up. If we do need any questions regarding the platform as it sits on the Assembly section, we can review it there. But let me kind of go through what you have in front of you. You have basically the draft sections of our manual. You also have, for reference, the LSBA Policy Management Console. So these are basically printouts of what you would see as LSBA's template that would be on the Assembly platform in its native state. So what LSBA does is they give you a template policy. They give you different options, and I'm sure you've all seen that, but I'm kind of just repeating it just for everybody in case anybody's tuning in. They give you different options to select from that have been reviewed by their legal and written by their staff that writes policies. Okay, it's very well structured, very well organized. I like the opportunity for the different options, although there are, as we kind of work through those, you'll see there will be some items that we may want to add or modify slightly or altogether. But that'll be up to the committee, and then, of course, for approval by the full board. Do we have, Dr. Fagenbush, do we have the other Natchitoches? Yeah. So also for reference, you'll see Natchitoches Parish School Board. The reason I asked to have those also for reference is because those are active, if you will, for Natchitoches Parish School Board. That has been reviewed by our same legal group that we use, Hammonds and Sills. They're following the LSBA policy, kind of this whole process, and these are final for them. So they have worked through some of those challenges, and it has gone through legal review. If we have any specific changes to make tonight, and really everything we're going to do tonight is going to have to go to legal review regardless, okay? But I wanted to have the Natchitoches there because I was using that as a go-by as well, just to kind of compare. You got all the different options that LSBA presents. Kind of what did Natchitoches decide on as their final version based on what I was thinking also.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Natchitoches in general is very, very comparable to the size of our parish and stuff like that. Just for clarification for the public, why we would choose to look at specifically Natchitoches, because they had previously reviewed it, it's newer, and they're comparable to our size, correct?
They were actually suggested by LSBA as a group that has worked through the assembly process. Like this is a reference to kind of see how a group has worked through it, but other groups also that you will see listed have been worked through, and then of course our own policies are the ones that were referenced first, and to make sure they measure, this measures what our own policy stated before.
The correlation of each of this, correct?
Yes, ma'am. It's like a nice little reference of what has been done by someone else.
The correlation.
Yes, ma'am.
Population is comparable though.
Yeah, I understand that.
Correct.
We're correlating the policies to compare what we already have in review of what they have already printed and have legally addressed. So that's what we're doing, correct?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct. So, and I would like to point out that it is a lot of different versions, right? Our existing policies, LSBA's template policies, you got Natchitoches, you got all these different kind of different ways of doing the same thing. What I was hoping that we did as a policy committee is kind of streamline our policies, make them a little bit more clear and concise. I'm sure all you know that we've read through some, you have some conflicting statements every now and then, things like that, that I really like this opportunity to really clean that up. I would like to point out that Dr. Fagenbush and her staff, Ms. Elodie, have done a tremendous amount of work kind of preparing this for us and done a great job on it. So it's not that Dr. Fagenbush is writing the policies, but she has a lot of hands in it. It's our duty to write the policies and come up with the policies, but obviously she's going to have a lot of work and involvement in that process. So I would like to point out that distinction, that she is not writing our policies, but she absolutely has a lot of involvement in helping us to get to that final version. Okay, so having said all that, let's just, if you don't mind, we'll jump right in, draft section 00. If you don't mind, open that one up to policy 01.00, policy disclaimer. This one's a very simple one. If you notice what LSBA presented, they had orange text, orange highlight at one point. And of course, we just had to fill in that blank. That one's simple. We had to put in St. Mary Parish School Board. I'm basically just going to go through these and ask for any comment, if anybody has any issues or any questions on it. Otherwise, I'm going to move through and we'll take a section at a time to vote on. There's one, yeah. We're good?
Yes.
Okay. Any comments on that first one? All right. Hearing none, we'll move on. Policy 02.00, policy definitions. Same thing, you'll see the text that's highlighted in green is what we filled in. If there are any comments, questions, discussion?
So does that mean that they'll be able to use these throughout the whole? Hold on. That means that they'll be able to use the acronyms throughout the whole?
Whole policy manual.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, as long as they have a reference. It'll
Yes,
be
ma'am,
fine.
there is a reference. Okay, anything else? Okay, policy 03.00, policy manual and policy protocol. And I also would like to point out that, as you all noticed, and I just want to make this clear for the recording here, is that all of the state statutes and laws are listed at the bottom. I know we were doing that on our existing policies as well, but there are hyperlinks on the Assembly platform. You can go and just click it, and it brings you right to the statute that requires the policy to be there. Okay, any questions, comments on 03.00? And just tell me if I'm going too fast. If I need to slow down, I'll be happy to. All right, moving on. Policy 04.00, policy adoption or revision. Okay, so I would just like to point out on this one, we included the verbiage about the policy cannot be considered for final action by the board at the same meeting at which it was originally proposed, except when there exists a declared state of emergency or upon a 2/3 vote of the members of the board present and voting. Okay, one, you know, like we referenced Natchitoches. Natchitoches had that as unanimous. I thought a 2/3 vote was sufficient. I just want to point that out for transparency there. And of course, superintendent or their designee has to review the rules as they come up and make recommendations for changes. Any questions or comments on that? Okay, moving on, policy 05.00, policy suspension. Any questions or comments on that? I did have one question on that. I asked why that policy was needed, but I can't think of a specific example, but I'd hate to not have it and we need it at some point, so I'm good with leaving it in. Yes, ma'am.
Why after it's suspended would it come back?
So, again, not exactly sure. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So in the previous policy, it talks about emergency situations, those kinds of things. Sometimes if something comes down, maybe from a government entity that we have to immediately impose, then that could be a suspension of something.
Okay.
I'm misunderstanding. Can you clarify this for me?
So if there's a state of emergency where we have to implement because of a state of emergency, and we have a policy that needs to be suspended to meet that emergency declaration, we can suspend a policy, but basically, if it's suspended, it will automatically come back within this time frame unless we renew it. Right, Dr. Fagenbush, is that the way you interpret that as well?
Right, and it's just saying you can, again, majority vote, so it's really no different than any other process that we use. It's just saying basically you wouldn't necessarily have to go through that month-to-month establishment if it's something that was deemed necessary.
So they come back within that year, right? Yes, ma'am. Okay.
So this doesn't mean everything that we've gotten rid of as a whole, just specific ones possibly in emergency situations or, okay.
Yeah, that we would vote on to suspend.
Okay, then I'm
Yep.
good.
So is it necessarily a suspension or amending the policy to fit
That,
if it's an emergency, if you're gonna bring it back?
I would say suspension, that way we can just name all the ones that would apply as a suspension, and we don't have to take each one individually. We just say these are suspended, we can kind of handle them in global. And look, this is a what-if situation, just,
Right.
you know, yeah, but we have the opportunity to do it that way if need be.
Yeah. Simply because it's coming back, that's why I'm asking.
Yes, ma'am.
Within a time frame.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Think of something like when we went through COVID, you know, and some things we had to change because of COVID and regulations and all, so you suspend maybe a policy we had, and once we were finished with all of that, then we go back.
You go back.
Yeah, that's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah.
That makes sense for that one. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Policy 06.00, policy dissemination, just talks about how we're going to post these on the website when they become active, so they're available for review, in the board office. Any questions or comments on that one? Okay. Policy 0700, district regulations. Basically where a policy or a law or something is in absence of that, this is giving the superintendent the authority to make directives. That is as provided by law or rule. Any questions on that one? Okay, and then just like that, the next level would be at the school site. School procedures, policy 08.00. Basically the same thing for a principal at a school site, where there's absence of a policy, law, or rule, and a superintendent protocol, then a principal has that authority as well at the school site. Now, when a principal does that, that would need to be reviewed and approved by the superintendent. Any questions or comments on that one? Okay, so that is section 00. We didn't have any changes to the draft, Ms. Elodie, so I'm looking for a motion to recommend section 00 to the board for approval. Ms. Ansel makes that motion. Ms. Jones seconds. Any other discussion, questions? Otherwise, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, section 100. Okay, section 100, kind of the same thing. This gets a little bit more, it kind of starts to, I guess, zoom in a little bit on the way the board functions and how it's comprised. So policy 101.00, members, just basically saying that we consist of 11 members and how our single-member district shall be established following each federal decennial census in accordance with federal and state law. Any questions, comments on that one? All right. Moving on, policy 101.10, filling vacancies. Okay, so filling vacancies, if you recall, the template gave you several options on ways to fill those vacancies, whether you advertise, whether you, it's because of a death or whether it's because of somebody just resigning. So kind of different scenarios and different options with that. we tried to take what our existing policy was, that's where we started, and then create this policy to match what we were currently doing. So any questions? Basically, we're saying an unexpired term of less than 1 year, or I'm sorry, for more than 1 year, we can call a special election, which we would do. If it's less than 1 year, then we would fill that vacancy by, well, if it's in the event of a death, the board shall first offer the opportunity to fill the vacancy to the spouse of the former member. Okay, now, Dr. Fagenbush, does this have the verbiage that we, okay. Okay, so, yeah, and then also, if you read the sentence before that, I'm sorry, I skipped right over that. Within 20 days, fill a vacancy for which there is 1 year or less remaining of the unexpired term by advertising the vacancy. And then we have to advertise a process for qualified applicants to apply in our official journal. And then, of course, if it's due to death, it has a little bit different requirements. And, of course, once all that is done, we'll fill the vacancy by nominating any person from a list of persons qualified to fill the vacancy. Then we have to vote on it. I'll kind of give everybody a minute to read that section. If anybody has any questions or comments, let me know. Any questions or comments? Or if you need more time, just let me know. Okay. Moving on then, okay. Policy 101, Ms. Brent, you good?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, okay. Policy,
Reading as
okay,
you
yeah,
go
no, I'm
along.
trying to look for the eyes looking up at me whenever, but if you need more time, just put your hand up something. I want to,
Reading as you go along.
okay, policy 101.20, new member training and orientation. That's pretty much what our existing policy says and prescribed by law. Questions or comments? Okay. Policy 101.30, annual member training. That's by law. We know we have to have a certain number of hours for training. This kind of just talks about how by November 31st, we inserted that date. The superintendent or office or designee is going to review LSBA's website and make sure we all did our training, and then annually, superintendent's going to transmit a press release to our official journal about our training, if we have any distinguished board members. Okay, any questions, comments? Moving on. Yes, ma'am.
Why was the date of November picked for us? Like, what's the time frame? It's 30 days?
Yeah, Natchitoches, the Natchitoches manual had October. Okay, so this was basically, you know, it had October. That might be why you're asking. But I think November's fine. Really, as much workshops and training as we do, I don't think anybody's going to have an issue. I don't.
If you go to
President
the
Black?
board summer thing, you'll get your hours.
Yeah, it's what, 6 hours? Yeah, I think everybody here is going to have more than 6, except maybe Mr. Parity. Joking.
We also, I asked Elodie, Ms. Stewart, because, you know, she deals with that. And sometimes the information is not received by October by her to review, correct?
Correct.
So we're allowing her the grace to actually get the information that she needs in order to do the process. Yeah, I felt like we needed to ask her because I know, and if I can, when it talks about the superintendent, can you talk about your definition at the beginning, what you want to propose?
Yes, ma'am, I sure can. I didn't know if you liked it or not, but, okay. So, just kind of going back to, Dr. Fagenbush and I talked about this. I think I wanted it reviewed by legal. If you go back to the definitions in section 00, under superintendent, you know, we kind of come across, and I'm looking for my working copy. Hang on one second. We kind of talk about this a lot whenever we're looking at these policies. Anywhere it says superintendent, you know, the law is pretty descriptive as to what the superintendent role is, whatever. But when we talk about action, I would like the superintendent definition to actually add that where action of the superintendent is noted in this policy manual, it shall be understood to mean superintendent or designee where the superintendent has oversight of the action. So it's a little bit unrealistic everywhere that we say the superintendent's going to handle something or do something, that it's one person doing that job. It's a staff, Ms. Estee, you know, Dr. Sanders, Ms. Elodie, Caleb, everybody in here. Like, the staff all takes part of that at, you know, with oversight of Dr. Fagenbush. So I had talked about adding that. You know, we've already kind of gone past that. I apologize. I didn't know that. Yeah, we want to look at that through legal. Does anybody, I mean, look, if you have any questions about that or objections or whatever, let me know. But I know we kind of, in that policy, sometimes it says superintendent, sometimes it says superintendent or designee. I think the action part of it is important, that if it does require action, it's really unrealistic to say that one person is going to take care of all of those things. It's, so I wanted to just kind of blanket statement that in the definitions part, and then it's covered.
I'm not laughing at you, Mr. Mancuso. I just got a text from Miss Estee, and I should have remembered my nursery rhyme. 30 days have September, April, June, and November. All the rest have 31. We have November 31st, but it's actually November 30th. So thank you, Miss Estee. I'll remember my nursery rhyme next time.
Poop doesn't have any money, I looked right over that. November 31st. My question is, Mr. Mancuso, Dr. Fagenbush, when we give you that reign of responsibility leadership with your staff, is in what areas? In every area? That's what I'm asking.
Basically, when they reference the superintendent, they're talking about the superintendent and the people who work under the direction thereof. So not in every instance, so that's why the wording was really important.
The word that I think is most critical in that is action, where action is required by the superintendent. That it, action, yes, ma'am. So, yeah, because legal definition of superintendent, of course, is board secretary. Obviously, there's only one board secretary, right? So, Dr. Fagenbush, the superintendent, is our board secretary. But when there's action to take place, you know, that's where I think, where we try to put superintendent or designee to take care of that action. So that's the key word for me, and that's why I wanted to include that line in there and correlate it to action by the superintendent. Does that make sense? Okay.
I see what you're saying. I just wanted to know specifically, i.e., example of action.
Okay.
Just by the superintendent, example.
Yeah, so look, one that we just went over. So under policy 101.30, under the training, we say annually the superintendent shall develop and transmit a press release. Okay? I don't know that Dr. Fagenbush is personally doing that, or if somebody on her staff is doing that. But she's probably designating somebody to put that together and send it out. But it's her responsibility. She has oversight to do that. Okay, so getting back to 101.30, thank you. Anyone comments or questions on that one? Okay. Moving on, policy 102.00, member compensation and expenses. In that one, we basically took the same thing that's in our current policy and put it in the LSBA format, if you will. Any questions or comments on that one? Okay. Policy 103.00, selection and duties of officers. Okay, so on this one, we define the president and vice president, which, you know, president, vice president, and then we have the secretary, of course, as the superintendent, as I said before, but we're defining the term of 2 years, which is what we were doing already. And we did put in a basically term limit for president and vice president of 4 consecutive terms. So I don't know that, it could be up to, it's a limit, okay? It could be up to 8 years. I don't know that President Black would be willing to go 8 years. However, one of the requirements is to define the limit, okay? So that was the suggestion. Any questions or comments on that one? I'm trying to think if there were anything else to discuss on that. Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Fagenbush, you're also the treasurer to the board. So she's the secretary and treasurer to the board. That's in that policy 103.00, which is in the law also. Any questions, comments on that one? Yes, ma'am.
The only thing I have, Andrew, just because like we talked about another one before, the duties, so like the duties of the president and the vice president, if we shifted in the other one to where it's the superintendent with approval from the president, would those still apply for the duties under the president and the vice president?
You talking about setting the agenda?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like what, the setting the agenda, which,
It would be approving the agenda.
right,
It would be approving.
so it
You're
wouldn't
right.
be setting it, so that might need a.
You're right. Okay, Ms. Elodie?
Yes.
Under the duties of the president, in addition to those set forth in law, shall include the last bullet item, setting the agenda of the regular and special meetings of the board. It's going to be approving the agenda of the review. Review? What did it say? So the reason this question is coming up is because a later policy. What policy is that? The 200 series? Yeah, so when we get to the 200 series, I'll remind you of why we're discussing that now. In 200, under, what was it, 203? So under 203, we say the superintendent shall prepare the agenda as directed. So the president shall determine the content of the agenda for each board meeting.
Still the same thing, setting it. Call it what you want.
Would you agree?
Say that again?
The comment was, basically, the president shall determine the content, which, do you find that means the same as setting the agenda?
Yes, because I would think the.
Yeah, for her to approve the agenda for release.
Yes, the superintendent sets it and the president approves it.
Okay, so, I'm sorry, I was looking at my working edition. Did we change that? I apologize.
It's whatever was given to me that's in this, so it's in this document.
Yeah,
It's in the 200s on page 7.
203, I apologize. I was reading the original that I was working off of. The content of the agenda of each board meeting shall be determined by the superintendent with approval of the president. Okay, thank you for that. So, yes, Ms. Elodie, we're going to put approval instead of setting the agenda, approval of the agenda of the regular and special meetings of the board. And then the same under the vice president? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Black. Any other questions or comments on that one? Okay. Moving on, policy 104.00, board committees. I'm going to take 104.00 and 104.10, advisory groups, together. Reason for that is I'm going to recommend to table those two items. As we were working through these, we were having questions about what we wanted to consider committees versus advisory groups, and we wanted a legal review and definition of, if you notice, under advisory group, that would not, in my opinion, be a committee, but we say a special education advisory council and discipline policy review committee. But we have committees under 104.00. Now, I want to caution, it seems kind of straightforward, but I want to caution everybody, like, those are established by law, okay? So if the law is saying it has to be a committee, then we may want to look at putting that in the committees. But if the law is saying that it is a advisory group, then I want it under advisory group. But it's kind of like we want to get legal definitions as to how those two policies will function, whether we're going to have a standing committee for that, or if it's just going to be advisory group. Now, there's a lot of advisory groups that kind of come through that are not described here, and that's fine. But I just want to caution everybody. So I'll basically want to table that until we can have more discussion with legal. Any other questions, comments, any problems with that?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So you saying we want to change from the committees to advisory?
No, ma'am. I'm saying that the way that LSBA kind of had it laid out, and the way the laws kind of read, they'll call them advisory groups, but the name of it is committee. Well, if it's a committee, it's subject to every open meeting law, same as a regular board meeting. But we need to be careful as to what we're considering as an advisory group only versus what is actual committee of the board. So I wanted a little bit better legal definition of where those lines, where they cross, and what category that group fits in specifically. I didn't want to make that determination without talking to them. And if you notice, those are two big policies, right? And I just wanted to get the legal definition of those items, so I'm recommending that we table those two, 104.00 and 104.10. Everybody good with that? Any questions, comments? We will have another chance to review that, so we're not approving it, we're just tabling it for now. Okay, moving on. Policy 105.00, board attorney. Okay, so if you look at this one, basically we are cleaning up what we are doing. We are engaging, contracting a Louisiana licensed attorney or law firm to serve as the board's general counsel. Okay, were other options presented. I think we are all well aware of the necessity to have the proper attorneys contracted. I think that other options are having staff attorneys or whatever can be investigated in the future, but that now is not the time for any of that. So any questions or comments on that one? Okay, moving on. Policy 106.00, state association membership, pretty straightforward. We're going to be members of LSBA. And that is it for that one. So in that regard, I'm looking for a motion to recommend to the full board section 100 with the exception of the two that we're looking to table. Ms. Brent makes the motion. No, second. Ms. Jones seconds. Any discussion or questions, comments? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Okay. Section 200. First one up is policy 201.00, regularly scheduled meetings. We're going to set the meeting schedule at the first board. We're going to set and adopt it by the board by the first regular school board meeting in January of each year. That's what we're doing now, so basically that's no change as to what's currently being done. Any questions, comments? All right, moving on. Policy 201.10, special meetings. Basically, special meetings can be called by the president, vice president. That's pretty much straight out of the law. Any questions, comments on that? Okay. Policy 201.20, meeting by electronic means during a declared disaster or emergency. I think this was relatively new, but fairly consistent with what everybody's doing to meet by electronic means. Any questions, comments on that one? Okay, moving on. Yes, sir. You good? All right. Policy 202.00, notification of meetings. We're going to notify and post the agenda pursuant to state law and board policy. Any questions, comments on that one? Okay. Policy 203.00, meeting agendas. So this is what we were just talking about. The content shall be determined by the president and approved by the president. Of course, determined by the superintendent. What did I say?
Determined by the president and approved by the president.
Well, I mean, it's all the same. That was the superintendent, that was the superintendent's designee. So, okay, so, also, a board member may have an item added to the agenda. So this one is a little bit different. I wouldn't say different. This one is a little bit more concise than our current active policy, okay? Board members, you know, we all get the email asking if we have anything to add to the agenda or anything we'd like to have on the agenda. So this is basically just saying that in a concise way. Any questions or comments? Okay. Policy 204.00, meeting procedures, just saying that we're following Robert's rules, which is what we've been doing. Questions or comments? Okay. Policy 204.10, public participation and public comment. Yes, ma'am.
So I would like to add in there as far as public participation what the legal amount of time is, which is a 3-minute length of time. That was, I don't know if it was removed, but I feel like there have been some comments in a recent past about how long we give members of the public to speak, and then usually at the discretion of the president, they can continue to speak if she allows them to. Unfortunately, I feel like it needs to be put in there.
The 3 minutes?
Yeah.
Specify. Was this one we wanted to table to ask Evan what his issue was with it?
No, so I didn't want to table it, but I did want to ask Evan about the public comment period. So under guidelines for public participation, a public comment period shall be held before any vote is taken on an agenda item, and then the comment period shall precede each agenda item. I want to ask him what the specific rules were there. I understand what you're saying, Ms. Hanson, we don't, so I think on our card, where did we say that we're,
Yeah, but number 2 says as brief as possible,
Right.
which is vague.
it's vague, yes. I think on our card, we say it's limited to 3 minutes, but,
But I would like it in the policy to where,
It should be as brief as possible with, comments.
right, if there would ever be a dispute in any way, shape, or form, I would like it written in the policy that as far as law states, we only have to give you 3 minutes. It's at the privilege of our our
President.
board president, whether she'll allow you to continue to speak.
I don't know that it's in law, like a time limit.
It's not,
Kind
no.
of at the discretion of the board.
No,
That's, yeah,
If it's in policy, I agree. I think you meant policy, not law.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's enacted as policy, the 3 minutes.
So what about,
That they have it in that.
It was enacted in 3 minutes.
3 minutes?
Possible, but not
3 minutes is
exceeding
stated
3
in
minutes.
what about in the policy we just placed, right before remote participation by members? would you be okay with where it says on the third sentence, each person indicating the desire to do so shall be given no more than 3 minutes to address the board?
Why wouldn't we just modify number
I
two?
was looking to see if it was, I'm telling you, it's an open meeting law somewhere.
But would you be okay with that, like, right above, remote participation, the paragraph before, line 3, it begins each person? Each person indicating the desire to do so shall be given no more than 3 minutes to address the school board on each agenda item?
Where, okay. Can you point that out?
The
please?
last paragraph, the last section and guidelines for public participation,
Okay.
in that last section, line 3, going over to the fourth word, each person indicating a desire to do so shall be given no more than 3 minutes to address the school board on each agenda item added.
And then could we add, unless by the privilege of the board president? You know what I mean? Because if she would allow them to keep speaking, I'm okay with it, but at the discretion of the board president.
Yeah, I agree.
So that will be under the guidelines for public participation?
That would be in the policy for public participation, yes, ma'am.
Right, I mean, it is in that, I thought it was in here also.
I'm looking for two.
It should be in here.
I'm pretty sure there's an open meeting law.
Yeah, and, well.
My computer over there. I'm doing the old fashioned way.
What does it say? Read it, can you read it? Because I can't see it.
So one of the challenges on this one was that this policy was revised. Dr. Fagenbush, do you remember that it was 20?
The last revision was August 10th, 2023.
So one of the things that we kind of held that in a little bit higher regard on this one, being that this one was very, and well, in terms of policies, somewhat recently revised. So we were trying to stay as true to the existing policy as possible. However, I totally understand where you're coming from with that comment. Natchitoches does have that in theirs, the 3-minute length. I'm good with the suggested wording that Dr. Fagenbush presented, but any other comments or questions on it? Okay, so we have the, that's open meeting law?
Yeah, it's noted, revised statute 4215, school board meetings, public comment. It's one of the linked, it's already linked in the proposed document. We could also say at the beginning, if it would be for clarity, at the very beginning, in accordance with state law, the public shall be allowed to comment on any action item on the agenda prior to the board considering the item. And then just in another line, say, those, basically, no more than 3 minutes will be given to address the board unless otherwise allowed by the
The president.
president.
Yes.
I like it right there.
Yeah,
Okay.
sounds great.
Oh, that's because the bottom line is the president still can limit it. It's into the subject of what you said. Yeah, yeah. To the subject matter that's, right. I understand.
So, that is a question I have. Basically, we have those revision dates at the bottom of that policy. I think that was probably just a copy. You know, we did copy and paste the majority of that policy in here, being that it was revised August 10th. But I don't think we need those revision dates as part of this new platform.
I would agree.
Being that this would be a switch to a new platform, I think that those revision dates can come off. Would,
Right, once we rename them, none of them will be the former. This was just put in to show the committee that this
Okay.
was a recent revision. At the end, I will have a request about how we format this afterwards, if that's okay, I'd like to do
that's
that.
fine. So I think, we're just making the recommendation. I think we're recommending to the board kind of the content of it. Those things will get fully approved at the board meeting. So, okay.
Understood.
Okay, any other questions or comments on, Dr. Fagan, you're good on that one? You got it all written down? All right, okay. Any other questions, comments on 204.10, public participation? Okay, moving on. Policy 205.00, official journal. Okay, so name the official journal, we're going to do that by the month of May. Any questions, comments on that one? Okay, well, section 200 is complete. Looking for a motion to recommend that to the full board with the modifications we made. Ms. Ansel makes that motion. Ms. Jones seconds. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, oh, yes, ma'am.
Just for clarity and permission from the committee, as we've gone through, like, Ms. Stewart and I have made notes, like some of them, we had some of the assembly notes, like optional policy, and that's still in there. Are you okay with us just cleaning that up for the final presentation to the board for, like, all of the right margins, left margins, all the things that we might need to do, getting rid of some of the grays and those kinds of things that were here?
Absolutely, yeah. I think
Absolutely.
So part of having this policy committee and doing all of these kind of like we're doing is for the consistency for them to be formatted the same, look the same, be reviewed the same. So having said that, I mean, we're at the end, but I don't want to take up too much everybody's time, but did everybody get the crosswalk, as Ms. Pope called it? Make sure you have access to that. Ms. Elodie, I would like to see if we can put that also in the assembly platform as one of the, I don't know, supporting documents. I don't know if there's a place that we could maybe put that. Just so that all the board members, as they're going through, they have access to that as well. If not, we can just maybe email it to everybody. Okay, perfect. The full board too. But any other comments or discussion on the way we're kind of going about this, or changes we need to make? I think we'll get better at it, but the policies will get a little bit more complicated to handle. So, it's kind of where we're at, but I do think it's a good thing to do and hopefully streamline things for this district.
As we work through this process, Ms. Stewart and I were talking, currently we have our CAPS whole system still up, and then we have the assembly system. We have noticed that in some places, they have moved everything from CAPS over, and still we're calling it Section A, Section B. We were thinking that perhaps if the board can kind of consider before the next meeting, as we do a section, we can update it formally known as, but we could go ahead and move everything over. And then as we update the sections formerly known as CAPS Policy A, now Section 100, and then as we go through it, people will understand what we're doing in the process. We didn't know if that was something to be considered.
So basically, you're going to take the LSBA policy and bring it into CAPS, or vice versa? Okay, so bring the CAPS policy into the LSBA.
As a parent, I would really appreciate
Just as
that.
the system for the public to see.
Yeah, I'm from when I would research as a parent, I knew certain policies that I needed to know. So going to another system, I'd be like, well, I know it's this, but. So I really appreciate it. I think it would be better for some of the parents and just being able to go from one side to the other.
We'll think of a better way to word it by the, the next board meeting and kind of give a sample.
I think a sample would be very helpful, and we could actually run through it, Mr. Veeks probably run through it and kind of show how that works. So that when we do get those phone calls from people looking for that policy, we know exactly what's going on as well. That would be very helpful, so. I'm definitely open to it, though. I know the transition here is, we're trying to make it as easy as possible, but, it is a transition, so. Okay, any other questions, comments? Otherwise, looking for a motion to adjourn. Ms. Jones makes the motion, second? All right, Ms. Anselm seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.